My name is Ella, and at 28 years old, I thought I had finally escaped the emotional servitude that defined my youth. After 10 years of building a life on my own terms, I made the mistake of answering the family group chat. The message was an invoice for $6,000. When I questioned it, my sister Ashley simply replied, "You owe us." I stared at the screen, the glowing white text of the invoice suspended in the stillness of my condo, 10:51 p.m. The request wasn't merely about money. It was a demand for a portion of my future, claimed by a history I had painstakingly worked to leave behind. 2 years of quiet undone by a single entitled text. I didn't cry. I didn't feel the familiar flare of anger ignite in my chest. What surfaced instead was something cold, crystalline, and razor sharp. It was clarity. For years, I had functioned as the silent underwriter of their idea of family, absorbing their emotional shortfalls and logistical disasters with my time, my energy, and my bank account. My empathy had been treated like an open line of credit, one they had maximized without hesitation. That night, the account closed. I walked into my home office and lifted the lid of my laptop. The pale light of the screen washed over my face, but I felt detached, almost clinical. My fingers moved with a precision they had never known before. I opened a new spreadsheet. The cursor blinked in cell A1. In the first column, I entered date. In the second, service rendered. In the third, market value. My memory, once a source of muted ache, transformed into a meticulous ledger of transactions. I began to type. August 4 years ago, emergency babysitting while Ashley attended a fashion expo. 72 hours at a professional nanny rate of $25 per hour, $1,800. Christmas 3 years ago, unpaid inventory manager and shipping clerk during Ashley's holiday rush, 40 hours. A fulfillment specialist earns at least $20 per hour, $800. The entries multiplied, driving mom to 5 separate stores in search of the exact curtains Ashley wanted. I categorized it as private chauffeur service. 5 hours at $50 an hour, $250. The $2,000 loan I gave Ashley for her first website forgotten conveniently the moment her online boutique went live. The $800 I covered for Dad's car repair 2 winters ago when he just couldn't swing it. I added last-minute plane tickets for emergencies that turned out to be inconveniences. Catered holiday meals I paid for and prepared, barely thanked for, graduation gifts, birthday gifts, and the steady, exhausting emotional labor of being their perpetual crisis manager. I priced everything conservatively. This wasn't vengeance, it was reconciliation. At 11:58 p.m., I pressed the sum function. The final figure illuminated the bottom row of the spreadsheet, $14,250. I saved the file as Ledger Clark Family Outstanding PDF. Then I reopened the family group chat. Ashley's message still sat there, expectant, self-assured. I tapped the paperclip icon and attached the PDF. Then I typed one measured sentence, regarding your invoice for $6,000. Please review the attached statement detailing your outstanding balance with me. Once my larger invoice is paid in full, I would be open to discussing a new line of credit. Terms and conditions to be determined. I pressed send at 12:03 a.m. My phone erupted immediately, vibrating against the marble countertop in a panicked staccato. Ashley, Mom. Then Dad, a rare contributor. Notifications flooded the screen. What is this? Is this a joke? Call me right now. I didn't answer. I silenced the device and poured myself a glass of water, my hand steady. I searched for guilt, for regret, for the tremor of second thoughts. There was nothing but clarity. They weren't stunned by their actions. They were stunned that I had itemized them. This wasn't a breakdown, it was a balance sheet. And for the first time in my life, I stood on the favorable side of the ledger. I woke the next morning to the persistent vibration of my muted phone against the nightstand. 27 missed calls. 43 new messages. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, striping the floor in gold, yet the digital barrage felt like a private storm system gathering overhead. I didn't read the texts. I didn't need to. I could already hear the script: shock, indignation, accusations of selfishness. Instead, I brewed coffee. The familiar aroma anchored me in the present. In this life, I had constructed brick by painful brick. As the machine hummed, memories surfaced not as open wounds, but as exhibits. 2 years ago, standing in my parents' kitchen, the scent of roast chicken and cherry pie heavy in the air, food I had prepared from scratch that morning. I got promoted, I had said clearly. Senior clinical specialist, they're transferring me to the Raleigh office. No one looked up. The television broadcast a baseball game. Ashley was mid-live stream, pitching products to her followers. Mom chased one of the kids down the hallway. My announcement dissolved into background noise. Minutes later, Ashley declared she had made $2,000 in sales that day. The room erupted cheers, applause, proud smiles. My 15% raise and relocation bonus had earned silence. That was the pattern. My existence was ambient, useful but unnoticed. I was the family's invisible framework, the unpaid holiday caterer, the dependable babysitter enabling Ashley's ambitions. The emergency reserve for their financial miscalculations. I took a sip of coffee, warmth spreading through me, a sharp contrast to the cool resolve anchored in my chest. They hadn't called on my last birthday, not one of them. When I phoned Mom that evening, she sounded distracted. "Oh, honey, I meant to call. Ashley's in another crisis with the boutique." I've been on the phone with her all day. A crisis. There was always one. Ashley's business, Ashley's children, Ashley's chaos. Their world orbited her like a sun. I was a distant satellite, acknowledged only when my gravity could solve a problem. Last night wasn't impulsive, it was inevitable. A lifetime of one-sided transactions had finally been documented. My ledger wasn't retaliation, it was validation. Proof that my time, my labor, and my resources carried worth, even if they had never chosen to recognize it. For once, I wasn't requesting to be seen. I was requiring compensation. The calls and messages persisted for 2 days. When outrage failed to provoke a response, the approach shifted. On the third morning, my phone rang again. Mom. This time I answered, placing it on speaker while I watered my plants. "Ella, oh thank God, I've been so worried." Her voice trembled with manufactured tears, a tone I knew well. "I'm fine, Mom, fine. Ashley is a wreck. She hasn't slept. Do you understand what you've done to her?" I clipped a dead leaf from my monstera. I sent her an itemized statement of services rendered. That's standard practice. Business, this is family. The tears evaporated, replaced by indignation. "After everything we've done for you. We raised you, we fed you, we gave you a home. Yes, you fulfilled your basic obligations as parents, I'm grateful, but that doesn't grant lifetime access to my labor." A sharp inhale. Indentured. "Ella, who's been filling your head with this? That new life of yours has changed you. You're cold." "I'm not cold. I've stopped sacrificing myself." "There's a difference. Your sister needs help," she pressed, voice lowering conspiratorially. "The boutique failed. She's drowning in debt. We thought with your promotion you could help her." Help us? There it was, the truth dressed in guilt. My achievements were not celebrated, they were harvested. "My finances are my own, Mom. As Ashley's are hers, she can review the invoice. If she'd like to discuss a payment plan for the $14,250 balance, she can email me." "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious." I ended the call before she could respond. My heart beat steady and sure. The phantom guilt I expected never arrived. In its place was certainty. They had escalated with emotion. I would escalate with formality. The phone call with my mother was a turning point. It proved they would never see my boundaries as valid. They would only see them as obstacles to be overcome with more manipulation. Emotional appeals had failed, so they would likely try something else. I had to get ahead of it. That afternoon, I spent an hour on the phone with a lawyer specializing in family law and harassment. I explained the situation with the same clinical detachment I'd used to build my spreadsheet. I recounted the years of financial and emotional demands, the recent $6,000 invoice, and the subsequent campaign of calls and messages. "It sounds like you need to establish a clear and legally defensible boundary." The lawyer, a woman named Miss Albright, said, her voice crisp and professional. "A strongly worded cease and desist letter is the appropriate first step. It will put them on formal notice that any further contact outside of written correspondence regarding the settlement of their debt to you will be considered harassment." "That's exactly what I want," I said. Miss Albright drafted the letter that same day. It was a masterpiece of cold legal prose. It referenced specific dates and times of their unwanted contact. It outlined my legal right to peace and privacy. It stated in no uncertain terms that direct communication via phone, text, or in-person visits was to stop immediately. All future correspondence was to be directed to her office. I read the draft and a sense of profound relief washed over me. This document was the armor I'd never had. It took my personal no and transformed it into a legal barricade. I had her send it via certified mail to my parents' house and to Ashley's address. The silence that followed was immediate and absolute. For a full week, my phone didn't ring. No notifications lit up my screen. The quiet was so complete, it was almost jarring. For a moment, I allowed myself to hope that it was over, that the stark finality of a legal document had finally gotten the message through their thick wall of entitlement. I should have known better. They weren't retreating, they were just regrouping for a more desperate, more dangerous assault. The quiet lasted 9 days. On the 10th day, I was in a meeting at work when my phone vibrated with an alert from my credit monitoring service. I glanced down, expecting it to be a routine score update. The text on the screen made my blood run cold. Fraud alert. A credit card application with a $20,000 limit was submitted in your name with capital One. If this was not you, please contact us immediately. My breath caught in my chest. It took a moment for my brain to process the information. I excused myself from the meeting, my hands shaking slightly as I stepped into the hallway and dialed the number. The automated system confirmed the details an online application submitted 20 minutes ago using my name, my social security number, and my date of birth. The only piece of information that wasn't mine was the mailing address. It was Ashley's. The clarity I had felt before returned, but this time it was razor sharp, honed to a lethal point. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This wasn't emotional blackmail. This was a felony. My sister, in her desperation, had committed identity theft. All the years of her taking my time, my energy, my money, my clothes from my closet when we were teenagers, had led to this. She had finally decided to take my name, my credit, my entire financial identity. She believed she was entitled to it just like she was entitled to everything else. The bank representative on the phone was asking me if I wanted to file a police report. Yes, I said, my voice low and steady. Yes, I do, but not just yet. First, I need to make a phone call. The anger wasn't hot and explosive, it was glacial. It was the kind of anger that doesn't scream but methodically and completely destroys. They had crossed a line from which there was no return. They thought I was a resource. They were about to find out I was a reckoning. I didn't call the police, not yet. I went home and opened my laptop. I took screenshots of the fraud alert and the confirmation email from the bank. I saved the audio recording of my call with the fraud department. I gathered my evidence like a prosecutor building an airtight case. Then I initiated a conference call to my mother, my father, and Ashley. It took them a moment to realize they were all on the same line. "What is this, Ella?" my mother asked, her voice wary. "I'm glad I got you all at once. It saves me the trouble of repeating myself." I began my tone as flat and sterile as a hospital corridor. At 217 this afternoon, someone applied for a Capital One credit card with a $20,000 limit using my name, my social security number, and my date of birth. The application listed the primary mailing address as 123 Oak Street. Silence. I let it stretch thick and suffocating. I knew that was Ashley's address. They knew it too. "Ashley," I said, my voice dropping, "did you have something you wanted to tell me?" A choked sob came from her end of the line. "I didn't know what else to do. We're desperate, Ella." "I was going to pay it back. You committed multiple felonies," I stated, cutting through her pathetic excuse. "Identity theft, credit card fraud. You were willing to ruin my financial future to solve your temporary problem." "Ella, sweetheart," my father finally spoke, his voice strained. "She's your sister. She made a mistake." This wasn't a mistake. I snapped the ice in my voice, cracking just enough to show the fury beneath. It was a calculated decision, and it has consequences. I paused, letting the weight of my words land. "So here is what is going to happen. I am presenting you with two options. You have 1 minute to decide which one you will take." "Options," my mother whispered. "Option A," I said, "is that the three of you will be at my lawyer's office tomorrow morning at 900 a.m. You will sign a legally binding document, a familial disassociation agreement. It will state that you will never again contact me, my place of employment, or any of my friends by any means for any reason. It will also acknowledge your $14,000 debt to me, which I will agree to forgive in exchange for your permanent and total absence from my life. If you choose this option, I will not press charges." I let that sink in. "And option B," Dad asked, his voice barely audible. "Option B is I hang up this phone, call the Raleigh Police Department, and hand over my file of evidence. A warrant will be issued for Ashley's arrest. She will face years in prison, and I will do everything in my power to ensure she is prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. You have 50 seconds left to choose. The other end of the line was a chaotic mix of panicked whispers and sobs. They had spent my entire life holding all the power, leveraging my love and sense of duty against me, but in one desperate criminal act, they had handed me all the cards. They were no longer my family demanding help. They were perpetrators begging for mercy from their victim. "Well, be there," my father said, his voice heavy with defeat. "We'll sign the papers." I didn't say goodbye. I didn't say another word. I just ended the call. The next morning, they were at Miss Albright's office at 8:45. They looked smaller, diminished under the fluorescent lights of the conference room. My mother's eyes were redimmed. My father's face was a gray mask of resignation. And Ashley stared at the polished surface of the table, unable to meet my gaze. I didn't speak to them. I let Miss Albright handle everything. She explained the terms of the agreement with brutal clarity. They would have no claim on me, and I would have no claim on them. We were in the eyes of the law strangers. They signed their hands, trembling slightly. My father pushed the documents across the table, and for the first time in my life, I saw him not as a father, but as a defeated man who had enabled his family's toxicity for far too long. When it was done, they left without a word. I watched them go from the window. 3 people walking away from a life they had systematically tried to drain. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel sadness. I felt nothing but the quiet, clean emptiness of a space that has finally been cleared of clutter. Months have passed. The silence that followed is no longer jarring. It's peaceful. It's the sound of my life uninterrupted. My phone no longer feels like a potential landmine. My mornings are mine. My money is mine. My future is mine. The hole they left in my life was not a wound. It was a space that has since been filled with genuine friendships, a loving relationship, and the simple, profound joy of being the sole author of my own story. Sometimes I think about the choice I made. They pushed me to a point where my only options were to either be consumed or to cut the cord completely. I chose to save myself. If you were me, if your family ignored you for years but came back only for money, what would you do? Help them out of family loyalty. Be refuse but stay in touch. C. Cut them off completely to protect your peace. Comment your choice below, because sometimes the hardest thing isn't forgiving them,